The issue of database sharing or database matching and warehousing is the coming battleground for privacy protection, both in the public and the private sector. There are enormous quantities of highly sensitive and intimate personal information about all of us now contained in data banks all over the place.
And with the growth of the internet and network communications, you're not going to have any ability to access that information and try to correct it if it's incorrect. And that's a huge problem.
The corporation has an economic interest and, in fact, a duty to their shareholders, we should recognize, to exploit the system as much as they can financially. And so if transaction records of people's purchases has value and Mondex is legally allowed to sell it, they should sell it. And if they don't sell it, they're being negligent to their shareholders.
So we have the wallet reading card 1 or card 2.
You see, so often what happens, these things become something like the sorcerer's apprentice. We create the instrument. There's a legitimate reason for it, but the instrument goes on and becomes a monster in its own right. And largely because we didn't create the safeguards at the time, we didn't address ourselves, we didn't ask the hard questions, we just looked at the convenience, the administrative convenience, or whatever other legitimate objective had to be resolved, but we didn't face the price that may have to be paid.
Essentially, we are on the cusp of the issue. We are at the point where the technologies are now available to collect the most intimate details of our medical background, our genetic makeup. We are at a point at which governments and the private sector have tools like smart cards, like building data warehouses, which can assemble all of this material.
But we do not have the policies, the legislation, the understandings that will allow us to maintain control over that. And it's like time bombs waiting to go off. And we will find ourselves down the line waking up, I think, to the fact that we have lost a great deal of the control of information.
In Swindon, in the UK, Mondex had a test run similar to what they're doing now in Guelph, Ontario, and a group like ours called Privacy International was concerned about whether the Mondex technology was truly anonymous, which is how Mondex was describing it at the time. It was anonymous just like cash. And they filed in court an action claiming that Mondex was guilty of false advertising. And in the end, Mondex had to admit that in fact their system wasn't anonymous, and they withdrew the word anonymous from all of their public relations. And if you look carefully at the material that Mondex is distributing describing their test run in Guelph, you won't find the word anonymous.
You are literally defenseless when it comes to your privacy in the private sector, in the commercial sector. There are almost no laws, except in Quebec, which cover what they do with your information. So you and I and all the rest of us are going naked before the world, believe me.
The question comes to mind is, do we have the time or care to make those decisions? Those are difficult decisions and involve taking responsibility. And I think most of us feel so poorly informed, so poorly have access to such little information that we just decide, I don't know. I don't know the truth anymore, and I just prefer, I prefer for someone else to make those decisions for me.
If we as citizens sit back and let things just take their course, sit back and let those who would profit from these machines without any concern for those they may hurt or displace in the process, if we sit back and just let bureaucrats in Ottawa or anywhere else in this country simply make the decisions, we're kidding ourselves about what kind of society and future we're going to end up with.
The cashless society is a conflict between our desire for efficiency and our fear of outside control. So we like the idea of the cash card. Now we like the idea of Interact because it means it's more convenient for us to acquire goods in various ways. You know, we go and have our consumer transactions and they're made smoother, they're made less frictionful. But at the same time, we have this nightmare vision, which is apocalyptic, of some external force controlling us in a way by seizing our assets. So the scenario from Margaret Atwood's novel